President Trump is warning Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney that he'll impose a 100% tariff on Canadian goods if a trade deal with China moves forward. The deal would let China send 49,000 electric cars into Canada, facing only a 6% tariff. In a Truth Social post, Trump insisted Carney is sorely mistaken if he intends Canada to become, quote, a drop-off port for China to send goods and products into the United States. At the same time, reports say a top Chinese military leader has been ousted for taking bribes and passing nuclear secrets to the U.S. So what's really happening between Canada, China, and the Chinese military? Folks, it's something to watch closely. Here to explain is China analyst with the Gatestone Institute, Gordon Chang. His most recent book is Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Gordon, first, explain this Canada trade agreement with China. It doesn't seem like it's beneficial to Canada, and there's even opposition from a number of Canadian leaders.
There are a number of voices in Canada, especially in Ottawa, with Doug Ford, the premier, who has been very critical of the deal even before it was announced. Because what Canada has done is basically pushed itself into third world status. Here you have China exporting advanced industrial products to Canada in the form of Chinese EVs. And Canada, what does it get? Well, it's selling basic agricultural commodities, canola. This typifies third world type behavior. And by the way, we're also subject to that because we sell soybeans. This is a criticism that is born from seeing this pattern elsewhere. But also with these Chinese EVs, they're going to decimate Canada's car market if they allowed it into greater quantities. Also, there's an issue here, and that is the Biden administration in January of last year took a very important step. It essentially banned Chinese EVs from the U.S. because of their internet connections. Basically, they're rolling spy machines. Well, the Trump administration, at least preliminarily, has indicated that those Chinese EVs imported into Canada will not be able to come into the United States. And that, by the way, is the right thing for us to do, because why should we allow these rolling spy devices into the United States? So I'm glad the Trump administration has made that preliminary indication, and that means that Chinese EVs are going to be even less popular. Yeah, they'll be cheap, but who wants to, drive in a car where Beijing is listening to everything that you say?
The Wall Street Journal reported the removal of top People's Liberation Army commander Zheng Yuxia for leaking nuclear weapons secrets to the U.S. So what does his dismissal and the firing of other PLA leaders mean for President Xi Jinping?
I think that Xi Jinping has lost a lot of control of the Chinese military. There have been purges after purges, especially over the last 2.5 years. And you see media reports saying Xi Jinping purged this general or that admiral. I'm not so sure, because when we look at evidence, it suggests that Xi Jinping's adversaries in the military are purging Xi Jinping's loyalists in the military. And that means Xi Jinping may not have the control of the military that people assume that he has. So this is a fluid situation. It changes, I'm sure, by the week. But the continuing purges indicates the Chinese military is in disarray. And by the way, that means it is in no condition to launch a combined air-land-sea operation to take the main island of Taiwan.
So perhaps no immediate threat to Taiwan right now, but how about in the future? Do the Chinese support a war with Taiwan?
A Chinese invasion of Taiwan would be extremely unpopular in the mainland. But a Chinese invasion of Japan might actually be quite popular. And Xi Jinping might see that as one way of preserving his rule, because I think he is being challenged. But he knows that if he creates a high degree of tension with any country, but especially Japan, that prevents other Communist Party figures from challenging him. So I think that he sees this as a way of preserving his legacy and his rule.
You mentioned Japan. Most of us would think a war over Taiwan would be more likely. Why would Xi Jinping risk war with Japan when the country's relationship with the United States has grown closer and stronger under President Trump?
Japan is always a flashpoint with regard to China, regardless of the attitude of Tokyo towards Washington, because the Chinese are getting arrogant. We're starting to see propaganda types dehumanizing foreigners in general, and Japanese in particular, and that can't end well. We know that they've got conflicting territorial claims. Basically, China has baseless, from a legal point of view, baseless claims to the islands that the Chinese call the Diaoyus and the Japanese call the Senkakus in the East China Sea. And those islands are protected by the US-Japan military treaty. So if China were to try to grab them, we would become involved in the defense of the Japanese homeland. This is a situation which is, I think, volatile.
Well, another development is also volatile for China. Its Bureau of National Statistics reports China's population fell by more than 3.3 million in 2025, and births plummeted to a record low, just under 8 million. How serious is this population plunge for China, Gordon?
China is on track to losing about three-quarters of its population between now and the turn of the century. So a country which is now, it says 1.4 billion, could end up being 450 million or so when the clock strikes 2100. You know, the range of estimates is 330 million to about 770 million. I think it's going to be at the lower end of the range for a number of reasons. But wherever it is, this is going to be the biggest demographic fall in history in the absence of war. Even the Black Death in Europe, the bubonic plague, only killed one-third of Europe's population. This is going to be much more than that. And it's not only demography, which is long-term, of course, it's the economy. China did not grow at the 5.0% pace that they reported for 2025. We don't know where it was. I don't think anybody in the world really knows, but it could very well have been an economy that was in contraction. Xi Jinping has got to realize that the motor of China's rise has sputtered out.
Okay, you predicted the decline of China back in 2001 when you wrote the book, The Coming Collapse of China. Gordon Chang, thanks for being with us.